to Inside Personal Growth Podcast. Deep dive with us as we unlock the secrets to personal development, empowering you to thrive. Here, growth isn't just a goal, it's a journey. Tune in, transform, and take your life to the next level by listening to just one of our podcasts. Well, welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisen, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And joining us again for another podcast is author Dustin Dunbar. He was previously on a podcast about a book he called You're Doing Great and Other Lies Alcohol Told Me. And we'll put a link to that podcast as well. But we're here to talk about a new book that he wrote that each of you, and in the show notes, should be able to see it. It's so new that he doesn't even have a copy to show everybody today, but it's called Her Holiness. And I find every time I speak with Dustin, it's something new. Plus, you're going to have to check out his website. He is also going to run for president. So you're looking at potentially the new president of our country on the other side of the screen. I think that's really cool, Dustin. You're letting this all kind of maturate together, and it's good. And he just got back from a whirlwind tour over in Romania with his daughters. And so, Dustin, good day to you. How are things?
Things are wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you on again and to talk about this new book. And also, we're going to guide the listeners to your new website is going to be called, what is it again? You said?
Yeah, Dustin Dunbar, USA.com.
DustinDunbarUSA.com. A little bit about Dustin. Now I'm going to let him talk about it. Then we're going to get into Her Holiness, which this is a novel. It's really a compelling novel, and we'll get there. But Dustin grew up, he says, poor in Midwest America with abusive, alcohol-addicted father and grandfather, and he vowed never to be like them, which he hasn't. Devouring psychology books and researching addiction in his 20s, he earned a doctorate in psychology and believed at that time he had broken his family chains. So in 2009, he was handicapped, or I should say, he was handpicked by Ryan Seacrest to be on LA Shrink, which actually never made it to the airwaves, he said, but it was a pilot series. He said after drinking moderately and responsibly and socially for 20 years, he too became addicted to alcohol, and he's overcome those addictions. He's now living in Solana Beach with his two daughters, and he is a heck of a writer. So let's jump gears here. Let's shift gears, because this book, to actually write a book like this, you had to be really interested in the feminine energy. Let's just face it, because this is all about the feminine energy. And in Her Holiness, you tackle one of the most controversial topics in organized religion, and that's the women's ordination in the Catholic Church. Now, you were waiting for this new pope to actually be, how do they call it, ordained and put in place, and the smoke signal coming out in Italy. And I remember talking to you several times on the cell phone. Oh, we're waiting for the new pope. And this new pope is really, really a very compelling figure, and I think a really cool guy. We knew it wasn't going to be a nun, but we knew it was going to be a pope. What compelled you to write about this particular issue, and why now at this stage in our history as a country and a world?
Yeah, so 2012, I was living in Italy, and I walked by a newspaper stand, and it said that the Archbishop of Milan was on his deathbed, and he was one of those that lived super modestly, never took any extra money, never had anything, and he criticized people for, if they were driving nicer cars and stuff, if they were priests, and so everybody really respected him, and he was absolutely on his going off on the Catholic Church about how they're 200 years out of date and late and needing to get with society and break the old chains. And immediately when I heard that, I was like, "What? 200 years out of? I mean, that's like we're talking way in the future. What is going on?" And so the first female pope just absolutely, it was like a bolt of lightning, and it came through me. And the name Her Holiness was right there at the very beginning. And so this has been a 13-year adventure, getting this out there. And then, yeah, for the timing to be where we just transitioned, from who I love Pope Francis and everything that he did, to Pope Leo. And so it's the first published novel out there with Pope Leo as part of it and in it. And I definitely include him and, talk about that as well in the future, what's happening. So, but the whole thing is just empowering women. Women in general have now, in business and in sports, we're seeing them just absolutely take off, and that divine feminine energy is rising. And so the next step in our consciousness and our human consciousness is to everybody say, okay, they're spiritually equal. Why are we so afraid, I think is the word, of women in leadership roles in religion? And it's just this old school thinking of gender has like hierarchies through gender. And one of the things I say a lot is genitalia has absolutely nothing to do with spirituality. And we need to get that consciousness, that higher level consciousness, where we're seeing through those old school, roles. And I do see this as just a positive thing that is happening in our human consciousness. And we're now going to break through soon and see that happen. And of course, you got
I think
aesthetic.
you're right, and I'd like to add, the Piscean era was is transitioning to an Aquarian era, right? We've talked about this for a long time, but you personally were influenced, being brought up in a household of very strong women who you say inspired this work. Um, can you tell us about a specific moment or conversation uh, that planted the seed for Kate's story? Like, you know, where did that occur? When did that occur? The character in this book, by the way, for my listeners, is Kate Murphy. So you have some interesting characters in the story, but the reality is Kate is the main one.
Yeah, Kate's the main one, and I based her pretty much on my grandmother, who was 63 years that she taught Sunday school every Sunday. She missed like two, in 63 years. And she was the most kind, spiritual, loving person that I had ever come across. And the whole time I'm like, how can it be, that the men in the church and stuff have these higher leadership roles whenever they can't even hold a candle to her light? She was the embodiment of what we consider like love and peace and joy and all these things. And so even at a very young age, that's what kind of sparked it, is like, wait a minute, that's not right. And so I've always had that inside of me, and it's because of her. And then of course, my mother, very strong spiritual woman as well. And they're from Oklahoma. So they're also very grounded. They're simple and grounded and just incredible people. And it's like, we as men have, like, literally, how many times have you ever heard two men sitting around talking about empowering women? And right now, that's what we're doing, and it feels great. So a lot of times these conversations get into a lot of theology and what Jesus said about women being in the church, what the apostles said, all this stuff. And my whole thing is, how does it feel for men and people and just everybody to empower women? And for me, it feels incredible. It gives me so much joy, and I'm just uplifted anytime that I pick people up, especially any kind of minorities. Me being white, straight, American, and I've had all these privileges in my life. And what really makes me feel good is to help others who don't have, the privilege that I have.
Well, I one of the things that you truly are attempting to get across here is this whole uplifting of the feminine energy across the board, right? And for people to really embrace it versus resist it. And if anybody's resisting it, it's probably more, as you said, the white male, more, hey, we're being undermined by a woman CEO or a woman in some spiritual position or whatever, which is their perspective. They have the right to it. But the point is that the feminine energy is a healing energy. And you say Kate Murphy in the book is such a compelling protagonist. She's mystical, she's determined, but she's also deeply human, just like you said about your mother and your grandmother. How did you balance writing her supernatural abilities with keeping her relatable to readers?
Yeah, that was very tricky, and I just kept using kind of my own meditations. Whenever I meditate, I have visions and things that come to me that I'm like, I that is not me. That is not from me. It's whenever I really go in and I'm deep and I'm clear, my mind is very clear, and I'm literally in basically like space and everything's silent, and then these creative visions and things come to me, and so I don't really consider it supernatural. I actually consider it very human that we use very little of our brains and we are overthinking so much. We're just like analyzing everything all the time. If we can sit still and be quiet and be silent and do that for long periods of time, the amount of creativity and wisdom that comes through to us is, I guess you call it supernatural because it's not from this world, and, that's kinda that balance, and so it's really from my inner, stuff and just, visualizing different places and history and what could happen in the future. It all just came through me. It wasn't really anything that I felt like I did.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because, that's a strong connection with the inner voice, with an intuition, which is coming from a higher source. And I know that's what you think and believe. And I am tracking with you 100%. I agree with that. And it's a bit unfortunate that we live in a world today where our perspective, if I put a picture of Dustin Dunbar right up in front of his nose, things are kind of blurry. And Dustin, for many people, I wouldn't say this is you, they just keep running from it. They never move away from the picture to truly see who they are because they're almost afraid to make a connection with themselves, right? I don't know if that analogy relates to you, but the reality is when you're drinking, that Dustin Dunbar had his nose against the picture. He didn't even know who Dustin was until Dustin pulls back to get a perspective and really see truly who Dustin is. That picture becomes really clear. Oh, wow, I'm this really good guy. I'm this really passionate person. I'm this great writer. I'm this whatever. So I'm telling people take a step back from the blurriness and the fog in your life that you've created because alcohol creates fog and it creates fuzzy brains and we make bad decisions until you get to where Dustin is. Now, this relationship between Kate and Dubray is beautifully complex, especially given their mutual calling to the priesthood. How did you navigate writing a love story within the constraints of religious vows? Because, hey, when you take priesthood, you're saying you're going to be celibate, at least in the Catholic Church. Now, that doesn't mean so in many of other churches, but in the Catholic Church, that's true.
Yeah, this is another part of the 200 years out of date. And for me, sexual energy is the number two energy on the planet. Love is first. That's always number one. Number two, that if you start repressing sexual energy, you're going to have issues. You're going to have problems. And we saw it with all the pedophile, the priests and pedophilia and things like that. And that's exactly what happens whenever that force is repressed so much. And so what I am saying is that it should be a choice. There's so many people I know who are devoted. They're like, no, I that's not for me. I want to just me and God, universe. We're tight. I'm married to that, and I'm like, that's wonderful, great. I respect that completely. But at the same time, it we shouldn't repress those and make them who are really devoted to God, to the universe, and want to be priests, but they also want to, be married and go and have children and things like that. So it's just another one of those things of the 200 years out of date, and that's just my take on it. And I just think that we would have so much more health, mental health, sexual health, inside the church, and all of this is to make us better. And whenever I say the Catholic Church too, I'm talking about Muslims, Jewish, Buddhists. I'm talking about across the board. They all, women have been put down in religion forever, and it's like, wait a minute, you look at Prophet Muhammad, peace be unto him, and what he stood for, in 600 AD, he was an absolute feminist. I mean, it across the board, and which a lot of Americans don't know that at all. And he said that women should be able to choose for divorce. They should own property. They should get the inheritance. They should have all the rights. And the men at the time were just absolutely laughing. I mean, women were property, period. And Christian faith too at that time. And women, it didn't even get to, in America, we're talking about, so 600 AD is when Muhammad was doing that. So it wasn't until 1400 years later, basically, that equal rights, 1975 is when equal rights for women starts. So for the Muslim side to be, when we see on the videos and stuff of men beating women and, the headscarves and making them do all this stuff, it's like, wait a minute, for me, that's not really being a true Muslim. That is, men power and ego and all this greed and stuff like that. So for me, the true Muslims, and I have a lot of friends who are true Muslims, and they are like, absolutely, women should choose to wear the headscarf if they want to, and be equal spiritually, and the education. I think there's some countries like Pakistan that aren't allowing women to be educated, and I'm just like, that. How can you be calling yourself a follower of Prophet Muhammad and be doing that? It's
Well,
absolutely
you
insane.
have a different perspective. I mean, your consciousness around spirituality and religion, and to me, they're they're kind of separate. Religion is very pragmatic. It's very how do you want to say, by the book, whereas spirituality is something that's expansive, right? One is contracting, the other is expansive. And it goes along with the times because in those times, we were trying to control people. Today, you know, I don't believe religions can be used to control because the consciousness of the globe has expanded and people have expanded to that. And it always reminded me of Mother Teresa. I remember this story from many times. I think somebody with a protesting group, and you've probably heard this story many times yourself, asked her if she would protest against, I can't remember exactly what it was. And she said, because of her feminine energy, if I can't be for something, I don't want to be against it. No, I won't protest. But I will rise up to be in favor of something, right? Like, hey, I'm not against this. So she was trying to stay with that is I'm not for being somebody who's against something. That would be a great example of feminine energy. Okay. Versus the male side of it, I'm against it. I'm going to raise arms. I'm going to be whoever I'm going to be. So you bring in a character, Father Kelly, from Rome to Cambodia is fascinating. What drew you to explore how institutional betrayal affects the individual faith? Because this was a kind of a shift in the book. It was a fascinating way for you to portray it. So, explain to the listeners what this was all about with Father Kelly.
Yeah, he is one of the powerful priests in this, and He, of course, has his issues just like any human on this planet. And this, he's one of the guys that, for me, it shows absolute humanness and but is that powerful masculine energy. And so I don't want to give too much away, but he's obviously a critical part in Kate's life. And, so there's some funny scenes with him too, where there's a lot of humor going on. But yeah, as far as the institutional, I try to let the reader just do their own, opinions on things,
Yeah.
and not explain the art too much. It's like, I feel like I've created a abstract painting,
Yeah.
uh, and
You fill
people are
in
like,
the pieces.
"Yeah, what does this mean?" And I'm like, "Well, what does it mean to you?" They're
Exactly.
like, "This is what it means to me." And I said, "That's perfect." That's
And
what I
I
want.
think that's the most important thing when you're reading a novel is um, you want to encourage people's imagination. You want them to imagine what could be. And so this book is about imagining what can be and leaves you with questions about what really could be. And the book required extensive knowledge of Vatican politics, Catholic history, and church law. What was your research process like, and how did you uncover anything, or did you uncover anything that was surprised you?
Yeah, so growing up in Oklahoma, a typical week for me would be Wednesdays we're at the Pentecostal catfish fry, Fridays we're at the Southern Baptist, dance, Saturday evening I'm at Catholic, mass with my friends, and then Sunday morning I'm with my grandma doing Bible study. And so that's just how it was growing up in Oklahoma. And I look back at that and I'm like, that's a lot of religion. That's
No wonder you took up drinking.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I just remember it was just the way to socialize, there was
Yeah.
Friday night football, and then there's church, and that's where everybody socialized, and it's kinda just the culture of it. And so, I just always heard all these different stories. It's funny because 'cause you'd go to one church and there would be it'd be like Easter time, and you'd hear, the version of the Southern Baptist, and then you hear the Catholic, and then you hear the Pentecostal, and you're like, "Wait, it's the same thing that happened, right?" Because 'Cause I'm hearing different stuff in different ways. So, it was just always super interesting to me, and then, getting older, I just loved everything to do with spirituality was just always just incredibly in consciousness studies and psychology and all that. But I lived in Italy, and I was able to really, go to the Vatican, go and be on the bridges that I talk about, be, there. And of course, today's research compared to back in our days of what were those note things that we had to use through the Rolodex and stuff?
Rolodex, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The research, it makes it a lot easier, but just like Dan Brown, whenever, he's writing his stuff, I felt like it took an army of people is what he said to create, his books, and same thing with this. I had so much help, so much editing help. People would be like, "That's not right. This isn't right." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And like going back and forth, so I had tons of help as well.
Well, one of the things you mentioned to me and you wrote into the email is that you wanted to get to the imbalance of this patriarch and how we have to stop this over aggressiveness and the way we do this, right? Um, through the rise of the divine feminine energy within all of us. Now, I've been told many times that I have a pretty good balance between feminine and masculine energy. But yeah, look, we can talk about archetypes, we can get into all kinds of things, but you being a psychologist and having studied this, you know, the reality is that when somebody's born male, they're conditioned in all of those ways that a male would be conditioned. When someone's born female, they are as well. What would you say, based on the character Kate and this book, that at the true root of this, you want the reader to walk away with?
Yeah, that inside of us, we are infinite beings and cannot be labeled. So the big thing is Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, he talked about the anima and the animus. And so men have an energy inside of them that is anima, which is the female energy that we're talking about. And if we go too far with the male energy, we're super aggressive, we're attacking, we're expansionists in politics and nations, and let's go and kill everybody and get more and more and more. And it's this greed and corporations and things like that. And then if we get in touch with our female energy, that is where the compassion and the love and the caring and the nurturing comes in, and we can be balanced as and it takes individuals to start this. We each need to look at ourselves and say, okay, am I too passive? Meaning, do I have too much anima going on, and then, or am I too aggressive where I have the masculine energy going on? And for me in my life, personally, I've gone through both. I've literally been where I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, that was my fault, and I didn't mean to, and just like this. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have feelings, and the whole time I was being super passive, and then but I didn't speak out and say my feelings. And so then it would come out in aggressive, form, the passive aggressive forms. And that's what I want people to really just start looking at themselves and say, am I balanced? Do I go whenever things really go bad and somebody's attacking you, or something's not right? Do you go inside and say, what am I feeling? And then communicate that in a calm manner instead of not communicating because you're too passive, or B, coming out and attacking through anger, and being too aggressive. And so if we can get into that really good balance that Carl Jung talks about, that is the integrated self, and that is a whole person. And so I'm not saying, you're going to be Buddha or like this enlightened being, but what I'm saying is now I feel whole, and I feel it's such a beautiful place to be. But it does take personal development, and it takes a lot of going within. And like you said earlier, looking at yourself in the mirror without the blurriness and really taking a hard look.
Well, the guru in the mirror is you,
Yeah.
So the reality is the God lives within all of us. That's my personal philosophy. I know, look, the religion has done, I think, and I may have said this before, but my listeners have heard it, more to divide us than unite us. Um, and I again, we that's what you're speaking about here is no, we have to be a we, not an I or a them, right? We have to be about us, about we. How do we come together? And the feminine energy does more to actually perpetuate that, to build that community, to have the love and compassion and support. And your book doesn't shy away from depicting corruption within religious institutions. We've seen plenty of it, okay? And it wouldn't matter if it was Tammy Faye and whoever the other guy was that stole all the money from the church and he ended up in prison, or this recent guy who just got pardoned by Trump, who was in the news, had his own little religious thing going. um, how do you balance criticism of the church with respect for genuine faith and believers?
Yeah, I love the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. And you'll notice in the novel, there'll be all kinds of little like incense burner smoke and details about being inside of old European churches, and just all of the history and the tradition. And if you take it, any religion, at its core started with love. And so if we can focus still on the love and get out and get into that feeling and get out of the theology of these ancient texts, and trying to translate this Aramaic and all these different languages into our language first of all, and then trying to understand exactly what all they say and all this stuff. My whole point is, do the religion, be Catholic, be Jewish, be all these things, but focus on the love and the energy that's inside of you. And that's what all like Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, all the saints, all the gurus, every mystic, they all say that you have this jewel, this energy that is infinite and that is eternal within you, and you are it. You you are part and parcel of that, and that is the whole thing that I'm trying to get to is we can do all the traditions, we can do everything, but we are equal in that energy that is within us, and we need to strip away the gender roles and allow women to be leaders in all religions equal to men.
You bring up something that I'm just flashing on. Just recently, I had Matthew Fox on here. Was an ordained priest, theologian, has written 30 books about the church, and he wrote one book about the Tao of Thomas Aquinas. And in that book, what he said, if you would really read what these people were saying, they're actually reflecting on much of what you are saying today, but it just fell on deaf ears. People would not listen to it because they were so swayed, brainwashed, whatever it might, whatever you want to say it. Um, but he said to have that, even that freedom with our sexual energy, like you just talked about. And he had to cover it in the way he wrote it, but he did write it way back then, Thomas Aquinas. Um, so I think it's important that there were many leaders during that time who attempted to make changes in the 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 churches. Okay, it's been happening for a long time, but they weren't successful 100%. Just kind of chipped at it a little bit at a time. Certain things started to change, and I think with this new pope, we're going to see some more changes in the Catholic Church. At least it seems that way. And I really like his style. Now, you said that, and we'll talk about this, that Kate's famous line about ordination coming down to a penis certainly causes controversy in this fictional world. What statement were you making about how we discuss gender equality with that?
Yeah, it's basically really simple that, like I said at the opening, that genitalia has nothing to do with spirituality. Zero. And we have to get away from that consciousness. That is a lower level, archaic consciousness. And anybody who is getting into the mystical realms of spirituality realizes quickly that you're not, it's not of this world. It's not, male, female. This is an eternal energy, if you will. And even all the quantum physics, scientists have proven that this hand here that I'm showing right now is 99.999% space.
Yeah.
The trees, everything that's physical is 99.99% space. And so our egos are sitting there, looking at things and going, "Oh, it's this, and it's analytics, and this, and this, and this." And but the biggest reality with a capital R is that universal energy, God, whatever, Allah, whatever you want to call that, and the higher power. And that's where we've got to be sitting there going, stop with the genitalia, and saying that they're lesser than or they can't be this, and it's tradition. It's like, let's go, let's give women their proper due. They waited way long enough to have the respect that they deserve. And as men, we all need to honor that, and as the religions as well.
Well, and I think you do a good job of portraying what needs to change, or at least opening up questions in the reader's mind about exploring what they want to change about themselves and what they would choose to worship, how they choose to worship, and how this would play out in their wanting to become more compassionate. But in the process of this, you created this intricate web of characters from Brazil to Cambodia to the Vatican City. I don't think you could have gone any further than what you did. And I think a lot of the people listening who will pick up this book and read it, how'd you manage such a large international cast while keeping this story focused. Now, I know you said, hey, I meditated and stuff would come to me. And you literally got much of this through a download. It wasn't you, it was this download that kept coming to you. And obviously, it was your own consciousness being guided by a higher power that was saying, hey, this needs to have an international setting. And so I'm just curious, was that really the reason?
Yeah, absolutely. And having lived in a bunch of different countries, I've lived a year at a time in different places, from Latin America to Asia to Thailand to South Africa, Italy, and Spain, and all these different spots around the world. And you get into that culture and you realize quickly that we're all one. And this whole idea that we're separate and is just such an ego, myth of separate nations, separate people, separate races, separate genders. It just goes on and on and on of this whole it's what I call the separation shit show. uh, and and so it's like we gotta get into the higher level consciousness, and that's that universal level, and it's all the people, and it was the writing. So I say that, and Catholicism is the one I picked for this, and it's Her Holiness and the first female pope, and it came to me and all that. But it's more of definitely an international, universal type book, that and what I was going for, and trying to get the whole everybody on the planet to take a look at this and say, hey, yeah, let's raise women up, is the best thing we can do for ourselves. And it's not solar energy, it's not, natural mineral resources, it's not all these other things that we're trying to get for, extra things to help us out as humans. And if we can just tap into that one thing that we haven't really tapped into, is for me is the divine feminine. And that divine feminine energy, if we can stop being afraid of it, and believe me, I understand it, it's powerful. If we raise women up, they are going to be powerful. I mean, we can see pieces of that. And so as men, we have to say, yes, let's do it. And it's gonna make our world so much better though. That's the whole point, is that in the huge big picture, if we do this, yeah, there'll be some knocks and things like that, but I guarantee it's gonna be the best thing we can do for the planet, for our
Oh, definitely.
it's yeah. I mean, if you look at what's wrong with the planet and humans right now, and it's this imbalance, and that's what we're talking about. The imbalance of patriarchy has gone way too far. It's been going on for a long time now, of aggression, wars, attacking. We have to get into our divine feminine energy that Carl Jung talks about, and get in there and really heal that attacking, what I call, like, expansionists. You see Putin expanding into Ukraine, and you're like, "Really? He's got 2 times the landmass that USA has, and all the, resources and all this stuff, and he still needs more." And you're like, "What in the world? What?" And he's got billions of dollars. He grew up super poor, and he's billions and billions. And it's like you just want to be the absolute king of the Soviet Union again, or something like that. And you're just like, it's that masculine attacking. We've got to put a stop to it. We've got to, say that enough is enough. Whenever that starts.
Well, these wars, these inner wars that are fought with leaders inside themselves, um, you hope you would see some softening and some shifts in the consciousness of the individuals who've been elected as leaders as they live through events which they're crafting and they're having big decisions in their life. You know, look at Trump's recent attack on Iran. Uh, that is a story that will play out for the rest of his life, right? Hey, I had the balls to go take some big B-252 bombers and bomb out this because we didn't want to have this in our life. And I think diplomacy and sitting down and doing ceasefires and things that are productive so we're not losing as many lives can be really well done with women. So, this book explores the tension between tradition and progress that exists in many institutions, governmental institutions, corporations, businesses everywhere. not just religious ones. What broader message do you hope readers are going to take away from Her Holiness that hopefully they wake up?
Yeah, that we can live on a planet that is mentally healthy, spiritually healthy, physically healthy. This is within our reach, and we can live in a peaceful world and in harmony with other cultures, other nations, other races, other genders. It's all about us as individuals going inside and feeling our feelings and then communicating them in a compassionate way instead of coming out with anger that we've done so much of in the past. And that's what I hope people really, take away from reading it. And just it's that future vision that we can all kind of hold it and say it's okay that women become spiritually equal. That's really the end result of this.
Well, the thing I want to commend you on is it was, you got this download, you spent all this time, and if I went back and did a histogram on you, right? And I said, hey, here's where Dustin was. He grew up with these grandparents and these parents and this and the influences that you have, and you've decided to kind of really morph when you think about it what you wanted to depict the story. Like, here's grandma who teaches Sunday school, great story. Here's mom who was super religious and spiritual, and all you've done now is from the masculine energy is really give it a voice. And you've done a really good job in giving Her Holiness a voice. And I'm happy for that because there aren't enough novels like this out there. And I think, like you said, we don't need to debate this anymore. The reality is we need to kind of let go and let be, and we don't need to fight that energy, which men have fought for a long time. Who's going to be better or whatever. We need to learn to agree with it, and if anything, live in harmony with it. Live in harmony with it, and don't give resistance to it. Thanks for being back on Inside Personal Growth. Are there any last messages you want to leave with our
Yeah, I just want to
viewers
give
and our listeners?
Yeah, shout out to Sister Teresa Kane in 1979. She wore blue armband, and I got one on here. I know there's a podcast and everything, but in all of my videos and interviews and everything like that, I'm going to be wearing the blue armband. In the novel, you'll see that she, the history of that is that she had 50 other nuns protested in 1979 against Pope John Paul II whenever he came to America. They were American nuns, and they were saying that we want the women's ordination to happen. And of course, denied it, denied it, and denied it. But women aren't going to give up, especially now that men are starting to get behind them. This is going to happen, and it's just one of those things. So everybody out there, look for the blue armband stuff to start popping up here and there. I think it's going to be a worldwide movement, and it's not just towards the Catholic Church. It's towards raising women up spiritually and empowering them finally. And then this planet can do some serious healing.
Well, and for my listeners, you want them to go to you've got a website, Dustin-Dunbar.com, or is it Dustin uh right?
Yeah, so Dustin Dunbar USA.com, and then all social media channels, it's Dustin Dunbar USA.
Okay. And we'll make sure that we put that in because one of those is a new website. And the new one is Dustin Dunbar USA. Is that right?
Correct.
.com, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll make sure we put that one up there. We'll put a link to Amazon to the book. I want to let all our listeners know if it's not out when you're listening to this podcast, the Audible book version is coming and it will be up at Amazon soon. So if you're somebody who likes to listen to books instead, you can get the Audible version. Right now, there's a Kindle version and there is the regular version of the book, paperback version that you can get. Dustin, thanks for being on Inside Personal Growth again. And sharing a lot about your own personal story, which led to influencing you writing this book and helping people open up to what's possible with the feminine energy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Greg, and always great to be here. And then thank you just for raising consciousness as well. It's what the world needs the most. I appreciate it.
Been doing it for 18 years. I always wonder when it's going to click in.
Might take a minute.
A minute, yeah. Well, I may or may not still be here when that minute
Hey,
occurs.
all you can do, come back another life and keep doing it.
Thanks, buddy.